So welcome and good morning, everyone. I want to talk this morning about a subject which is near and dear to my heart, unfortunately, which is rumination. And the word comes from really refers to a cow or another ruminant chewing their cud. It's this, but it's a perfect metaphor for this human activity when we latch onto something and go over it and over it and over it in our minds. We can't let it go. That experience where something happens and you just think about it constantly and you try to distract yourself and then you find yourself coming back to it like a closed loop tape recording. And we've all experienced it. Some of us experience it more than others. And I'm one of those more than others. And there's really four types that we psychologists have identified in which we would see a lot of times when folks come in distressed about their inability to sort of turn off their minds. The first one is worry. We all know that one. Anxious thoughts about our health, about the future, about the planet, about bad things happening in the future, about natural disasters. Worry, 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 worry. And very often, things that we have little control over, but it doesn't stop us from worrying about. And this one really exploded during COVID. We're isolated. There's this virus out there where everybody's wearing masks. I mean, the worry quotient went through the roof. The second category of rumination is resentments. And again, we know this one, angry thoughts. I've been wronged. I've been mistreated. Life's unfair, on and on and on. Somebody shortchanged me. Somebody butted in front of the line. They didn't respect me. The angry resentments. The third type, and we've talked about this separately here in the past, are regrets or remorse. We feel guilty, we feel ashamed, we feel sad about things we've done in the past. We revisit old decisions, we revisit missed opportunities, we revisit how we've treated people, just ruminating over and over guilty, shameful thoughts. And then the final, and really in some ways can be the most cause the most suffering, is feelings of inadequacy, self-criticism, shame. I'm inadequate, I'm not smart enough, skinny enough, rich enough, whatever, nice enough. It goes on and on, how we can get into this. And this is largely, as we all know, second arrow stuff. But there are three common denominators, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these in a minute, for most all rumination. They either are about sense desires, I want this, more of that, more of this. I'm upset I'm not getting it. The ego, protecting the ego, and issues of safety. Those tend to be the three categories that underlie all the three mechanisms, rather, the common denominators in all four types of rumination. Now, the Buddha recognized this in the word in Pali is papancha, P-A-P-A-N-C-A. And it's a Pali word, as I said, which technically means mental proliferation. That's how it's described in the Buddhist suttas. It's described as an automatic response that modern scholars have interpreted it to mean an automatic response in the human mind leading to what the Buddha called a chattering mind. I love that term, a chattering mind. And it's this almost instant snowballing of thoughts and associations that gets rolling when we step out of our mindfulness, when we just sort of go on autopilot. It's actually a form of mindless autopilot. In other words, it's what's happening. It's what happens when silently or aloud we find ourselves going on a mental rant about one thing that soon becomes about everything. It just becomes pervasive. It just covers us with this preoccupation. So what is going on here? Well, lots of things are going on, but in one ways, it's an attempt to try to make sense of of an ever-changing, chaotic world. It's trying to find some illusion of control. Very often, rumination is a way of trying to find an answer, solve a problem, an unsolvable problem. Repair an injury, repair a psychological hurt. One teacher that I've interacted with defined it as simply thinking running amok, thinking running amok. And as I said a few moments ago, it very often involves a huge amount of second arrow thinking. Remember the second arrow, the first arrow is the pain that we can't prevent. The second arrow is all the mental baggage that we bring to that painful or suffering experience. So what do we do about it? Do we just indulge it as a form of licking our wounds? Do we just let it run amok, as the expression goes? Is it a way we're trying to soothe and reassure our hurt egos? Are we identified with the content of the rumination? Do we sort of get really connected and identified with it, think it's, something we have to hold on to? Do we see it as a story we're telling ourselves, just another story, which is really a healthier response? Oh, here comes this rumination about so-and-so. Is this just another story that I'm telling myself? So as I referenced earlier, according to the Buddhist teachings, there are three inner drives that are responsible for rumination or papancha. And it's important that we become familiar with them and identify them so when they arise. The first one that can cause a rumination is craving, our old friend craving. When we're in that craving mode, we think of little else than the object of our craving. If I have a pint of Ben & Jerry's in the refrigerator and I just can't stop thinking about it until I go dig into it, I dwell on it, I rehash it, I ruminate about it, I keep coming back to it. And this can be skillful, let's be clear, because if we're dehydrated or we're hungry, I don't mean just for a pint of Ben & Jerry's, I mean legitimately hungry or dehydrated, that craving, that rumination it's a survival skill. I mean, it's something that's hardwired into us to make sure that we're getting our needs met for nutrition and hydration and so forth. But most of the time, I would argue, rumination is not skillful. It's just a form of mental masturbation. I gave the example, those of you that have read my book, of that when I was a kid, that cheap toy I sent away from the box tops, from the cereal box tops. And I waited weeks for it. And I thought about it constantly. I can't wait till my toy gets here. I can't wait till my toy gets here. And it was tremendously a form of suffering. And of course, as you know from the book, once it got there, some cheap trinket, and it was like, put it in the drawer. So anyway, the first form of the first underlying mechanism that the Buddha taught was craving. And that's something he talks about and we talk about all the time. The second inner drive that feeds rumination is conceit or pride, both of which are functions of our ego. Okay, it's about me, me, me. You hurt my feelings. I'm so proud. You better acknowledge it, so forth and so on. If our pride has been hurt, if our feelings have been hurt, we can dwell on it endlessly. We can ruminate about it. We suffer with it. So conceit or pride is the second underlying mechanism. And the third one is wrong view, from this Eightfold Path or delusion. Okay. And this one, again, we talk about a lot. When we see things as we wish them to be, not as they truly are. Okay. We ruminate about what we perceive to be the wrongness of the situation. Why don't they do it a certain way? Why don't they do it the way I think it should be done? I ruminate about that because it's wrong view. I'm not seeing the reality of the situation. I'm seeing how I think the world should be, not as the world is. Why isn't it this way? Why isn't it that way? On and on we go, on and on we go. And we suffer. We suffer. So, and the Buddha recognized this. He recognized this as one of the really profound forms, rumination, papancha, as he called it, of suffering in the human experience. So now that we've laid it out, what do we do about it? How do we manage it? How do we manage papancha, rumination, skillfully? Well, you will not be surprised when I say we begin by noticing it, okay? Hey, rumination's happening now. We bring our mindful awareness to our looping thoughts. We see them as simply as thoughts, not as the truth of our experience, whatever that might be, whatever we make that up to be. We see, we notice that we're doing it, and we see it just as more thoughts, more of an impermanent experience, just another story we're telling ourselves about something, about my hurt ego, about my craving or whatever. And by doing that, just by noticing it, that begins the process of de-identifying with our thoughts. Because what happens when we're caught in rumination is we think it's us. We think it's the real thing. We think this is my reality right now. And if I can't put a little daylight between that belief, that identification, and the experience, I'm just going to keep going until I run out of steam or something else distracts me. Okay. So I want to mentally step away from the story. Oh, there's a story going on here. It's all about how so-and-so hurt my feelings. And I could just go with it for hours if I'm mindlessly doing that. Okay. Secondly, we acknowledge the impermanence of that inner drive that underlies the rumination. This too shall pass. This is just simply a temporary situation. It's not necessarily who I am at the moment. It's not necessarily going to last forever. And then we accept the situation as it is, and then without piling on a bunch of second arrow. Oh, you're such a defective person for ruminating. Why do you do that? What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. You know, we just accept it. It's like this now. We all do it, and we do it whenever any of these conditions arise that I've spoken of. Okay. But doing these three things, noticing, de-identifying, and recognizing the impermanence, changes our relationship with rumination. It doesn't necessarily get rid of it, but it takes the power out of it. It changes the relationship with it by making it less, we're not so entangled with it. I mean, you know, the Buddha talks a lot about how we get entangled with these situations. We're not so entangled with it. Okay. So when I'm able to do this, my rumination really quiets. I can sort of just set it aside. When I catch it, when I notice it, that's the key piece, as always. And my suffering diminishes significantly. It will diminish. It may not go away, but it will diminish. And once again, here we are seeing how practical Dharma reduces our suffering in a very real way. So let me stop there, and let's talk about rumination.